Hey guys, this is Candle, and it is time for a new Let's Play. Yes, it has been a while, almost a year. Well, yeah, more like, what, 8, 9 months, something like that, since I finished Final Fantasy 3. I really needed a break after that one. That one nearly broke me. That is not a fun game to finish. It's fun to start, but not so much fun to finish. There's too much grinding involved, so much so that I ended up cheating and, using a level editor to boost my character's levels. So yes, we are doing Final Fantasy IV, and we are actually doing the complete collection. Let's go ahead and get into this and hit that. We are doing the complete collection, which is the PSP version. I feel it is the best version. Actually, we'll go back a second, because it is the best version not only because it does have the best 2D version of Final Fantasy IV, but it also includes Final Fantasy IV Interlude and Final Fantasy IV The After Years, which is a sequel to Final Fantasy IV, kind of a next generation style sequel where it follows the main character's kids rather than the original main characters themselves. And then Interlude, I don't know if that's just a collection of cutscenes or if it is a full game in its own right, but that takes place between Final Fantasy IV and the After Years. Okay, so getting into this. We'll let things run here while we talk a bit. This is Final Fantasy IV. Oh boy, this is a lot of people's favorite game. It is a lot of people's first game in the franchise. It was not mine. That was actually Final Fantasy VI. This originally debuted on the Super Famicom in Japan in 1991, I believe. Yeah, early 1991. And it came to the West in late 1991 as Final Fantasy II. Now, the reason why it was called Final Fantasy II in the West is because Final Fantasy II and III did not originally make it to North America. It was too late in the NES's lifespan. So, in order to prevent confusion amongst the consumers, Squaresoft, in their infinite wisdom, decided to rename Final Fantasy IV to Final Fantasy II for its Western release. Now, they also did some other things as well, and of course, their infinite wisdom proved to be a bit wrong because it just increased confusion when Final Fantasy VII came out and the internet became a thing, and everybody realized, hey, we're missing some games. Because we got Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3, but now there's 7. Where's 4, 5, and 6? Well, the truth is, we already got 4 and 6. Oh boy. Okay. So yes, Final Fantasy II on the Super Nintendo is by far the worst version to play. It is also the easiest version to play in terms of difficulty. And that is because Nintendo of America did not think too highly of Western players at the time and thought that Final Fantasy IV would be too difficult for them. So they reduced the difficulty and cut out a whole lot of features. And also, it has a really, really terrible translation. It was one of Ted Woolsey's first translations for Squaresoft, actually. But it was also not a good translation. So much so that a lot of item names and spell names are very, very similar to the effect that you have the Cure spell, and you also have Cure as a healing item. And that's actually what potions are. So it could be a little bit confusing in that respect. And, yeah. So this wonderful cinematic here comes from the 3D remake on the DS, but we haven't gotten there yet in the history of the game, because next, after the Western release, was a Japanese re-release called Final Fantasy IV Easy Type, and this was basically just the American Final Fantasy II, just with the Final Fantasy IV name restored, and with the Japanese translation. After that came the port of the original Japanese release with a new translation, no, the original American translation on the PS1. This added in a couple extra features, including 3D cinematic, FMV bookenders, which are not what these are. Believe me, they're so much worse. And introduced loading times because it was on the PS1. After that came a port to the Game Boy Advance with Final Fantasy IV Advance, which took the PS1 version, cut out all the PlayStation-specific stuff that the GBA couldn't do, and, I think it lowered the difficulty again a bit. I'm not entirely sure, but it also gave us a fresh translation, which was much closer to the Japanese original, and also what am I looking for? What words? Also, new battle backgrounds. Okay, after that came the 3D remake on the Nintendo DS, which is kind of in the same vein as the remake for Final Fantasy III that we got here in the West, where it's low poly 3D, chibi-esque character models and stuff like that. Still pretty much a one-to-one recreation of the original game, but it also features cutscenes with full voice acting during major scenes, as well as new cinematics like the one we just saw, and a couple new mechanics, and like the augment system, which I don't think is in this version, and also a much harder difficulty. In fact, the 3D remake of Final Fantasy IV is the hardest, the most difficult version of the game, which is why we're not playing it here. I debated on playing the original just to laugh at the translation and because it's the easiest, but I decided to go with what I consider the definitive version of the game, which is the complete collection for the PSP. It looks the best, it plays the best, it reads the best, and I just think it's overall the best. Plus, you've got the two, bonus games as well in the Final Fantasy IV collection. After that, the 3D remake was ported to PC and I think mobile. I'm pretty sure the 3D remake is the version that's on mobile as well, but I'm not entirely sure. The only reason I'm saying that is because Square Enix had this habit of porting the classic Final Fantasy games to mobile first, and then taking those versions and porting them to PC. They did it with 3, they did it with 5, they did it with 6. I'm not entirely sure about 4. And then, of course, 1 and 2 are still not available on PC. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. So anyways, we are going to go ahead and get started here. Alright. Final Fantasy IV's story is a lot more involved than the previous 3. In fact, it's more involved than 2, and of the original 3, 2 has the most involved story. But yeah, they were really trying. Didn't always succeed, but they were trying. Make some character arcs and stuff like that. Captain, we will arrive in Baron shortly. Very well. The captain seems kinda down. After what we did, who wouldn't be? Orders are orders, but killing innocent people to get the crystals isn't right. So yeah, the crystals do in fact make a return in Final Fantasy IV. They were in 1, they were barely in 2, and they were definitely in 3. But 4 goes a bit overboard. 1 had 4, technically 5 crystals. 2 technically had 4 crystals as well, but they weren't important to the story at all. 3 had 4 crystals in the game, and then there were allusions to another 4 as well, but you never actually saw them. Final Fantasy IV has like 16 to 18 crystals in total, and you see pretty much all of them in-game. The Red Wings are supposed to protect people, not harm them. That's enough. So yeah, that was a flashback we just saw. But Captain, surely you don't condone what we've done. All of you, listen well. The raid on my city was imperative. For Baron to prosper, we need the crystal's power. The king and his council concluded that the Mysidians knew too much about the crystals. We are the king's Red Wings. We cannot defy his orders. Captain. Captain, monsters sighted dead ahead. Prepare for battle. So now we get our first look at what combat looks like in Final Fantasy IV. We don't actually get to take part in it, though. It's all automatic right now. But you notice that action bar in the lower right? I'll explain that when we can actually control everything. But for now, just keep that in mind. Ugh. Are you alright? We've got more hostiles. Damnation. Yeah, this is our main character, Cecil Harvey. And his name is in fact Cecil. For years I called him Cecil, but the official pronunciation is indeed Cecil, according to the voice acting in the 3D remake, as well as the Dissidia games. Any losses? All accounted for, sir. We've been encountering a surprising number of monsters lately. Could this be some kind of punishment from the gods? I don't know, Cecil. What do you think? Captain, we are now over Baron. Very well, prepare for landing. Alright, getting a nice little look at the overworld here. By the way, I am playing this with a guide. However, I do not, unfortunately, have the guide for the complete collection. I have the Final Fantasy IV Advanced Guide, which should be close enough, considering this version is based off of that. Well done. So the crystal is now ours. The Mysidians put up no resistance. In fact, they were completely helpless. Is this pity I perceive? Come, Captain. His Majesty awaits. Yeah, I'll try to do subtle voices. I'm not very good at voices, so I'll try to do subtle voices for some of the characters, but they may come and go. But yeah, this is Baigan, who is the King's Chief Counsel. If you will excuse me, Captain, I must speak to His Majesty in private. Please, wait here. Your Majesty, I am afraid Cecil can no longer be trusted. He clearly questions your authority. I suspected as much. It matters not, as long as I obtain the crystals. Send him in. Yes, Your Majesty. Captain, His Majesty summons you. The Kingdom of Baron hails your return. May I have the crystal? Yes, Your Majesty. So we handed over the water crystal. That was the one the Mysidians had. So this is the crystal. What splendor. You are dismissed, Cecil. Your Majesty. What? Yes? What is it, Captain? Your Majesty, forgive me, but what are your intentions? My men are confused and displeased. And you, do you question my command? No, I only ask... Silence. Dissension only leads to treason, and that I will not tolerate. I hereby relieve you of your command of the Red Wings. Your Majesty! Instead, I charge you with another duty. Slay the Eidolon that infests Mist Valley, and deliver this Carnelian signet to the Village of Mist. Yeah, for the longest time, I always called it Eidolons. They pop up again in Final Fantasy IX. And for the longest time, I called them Eidolons. Sorry, my accent... I always want to swallow that D, but it's Eidolons. In truth, it is technically Eidolons, so we'll stick with that. You leave tomorrow, at first light. Your Majesty, I beg you to reconsider. Cecil has done no wrong, so this is Kain, who is Cecil's best friend. You insolent cur! How dare you barge in here? If you are so concerned about him, you may share his fate. Take the ring and be gone from my sight, both of you. So we receive the Carnelian signet. Your Majesty! I'm sorry, Kain. Once we have completed the mission, the king is bound to forgive us both. You will rejoin the Red Wings in no time. Get some rest. Leave tomorrow's preparations to me. So yeah, now we finally have control, so let's go ahead and get into the settings here. Battle mode, I definitely want that on wait. We'll increase the battle speed a little bit. There we go. Alright. Yeah, I want that when I'm holding the button. Yes. Okay, yeah, keep the character arc. Music selection. So we actually have the arranged music tracks, which I think was originally introduced in the PS1 version. I'm not sure. It might have been introduced in the 3D remake instead. But we can also do the original as well. So this is the original Super Nintendo MIDI files. But I prefer the arrangement, so we'll stick with that. It's a much richer, fuller sound. It's still pretty much the same, though. So we have the A to B gauge. Definitely want that on. Battle order. Do not change the order in which characters take turns during battle. Change the orders. So yeah, definitely let me do that. And we have the data install window design. So we can change the window color if we want. There are different patterns. I'll probably stick with default. And then different wallpapers as well. So yeah, we'll stick with the default. I kind of like it. Button configuration. So yeah, confirm button is good. L button. Assign it to talk and investigate things in the field. I mean, we can, but I don't really need to. Menu button, dash button, okay. No, wait. Dash button, let's put that on circle. Oh, you're kidding me, I can't put it on circle? I can only do X, a triangle, or square. Oh, that is bullshit. I much prefer to have it on my cancel button rather than my accept button. Oh well. Anyways, let's start talking to people. Oh, actually, first, let's take a look at our status, because we have Cecil, who is a Dark Knight, and he starts out at level 10. So this gives me a chance to talk about some of the changes to Final Fantasy IV compared to the previous games in the franchise. So Final Fantasy 1, you set your classes at the beginning of the game. Final Fantasy 2 didn't have classes at all. Final Fantasy 3 let you change classes throughout the game, continuously. Final Fantasy 4 doesn't do any of that. Every character has a set class in Final Fantasy IV, which really I think helps add to their character and their personality, because Final Fantasy 1, they were blank slates. Final Fantasy 2, the characters had history, but they didn't really have personality, and that was kind of reflected in the gameplay, where you could kind of mold them into whatever you wanted. And the same with Final Fantasy 3, they were kind of blank slates that were given histories in the 3D remake, but didn't really have personalities or anything. And again, you could change their classes and so on. Final Fantasy IV, every single character has a specific class. For Cecil, he's a Dark Knight. And even better, he starts out at level 10 instead of level 1, which implies that as a Dark Knight, he has some experience. You know, he knows a bit of what he's doing, which I think is just absolutely wonderful that they did that. And of course, we don't get to actually see his face because it's covered in a Dark Knight's helmet. But we do learn that he is right-handed, and he has a full set of Dark Knight armor and weapons. You know, dark sword, dark shield, helm, armor, gloves, and so on. And something new to Final Fantasy IV is this is almost tied in from Final Fantasy III. It's expanded on from the class abilities in Final Fantasy III. Where in Final Fantasy IV, each character, because they have a set class, has specific abilities. For Cecil, it is Darkness, which allows you to sacrifice a portion of your HP in order to, damage all enemies. I don't use it that often, but it can be useful in certain respects. Beyond that, you'll notice we also have 5 different character slots here, which means that for the first time in franchise history, you can have more than 4 characters in your party. You can have up to 5. However, the rows from Final Fantasy II do make a comeback, but you can't set them individually for every character. Instead, it's alternating, where the first, third, and fifth character slots are set to one row, and the second and fourth slots are set to the other row, and you can flip them back and forth. So right now, Cecil is in the front row, he's in the back row now, and so on. So that is the basics of it. So let's go ahead and learn a bit about this world. Mist Valley is northwest of Baron, which is good to know, because that's where we're heading. Surely nothing could stop the combined might of our Master Kain and Sir Cecil of the Red Wings. So these guys are like apprentice dragoons, basically. Because that's what Kain is. Kain is a dragoon. He's actually the classic dragoon, and he's the guy from the logo. Why was I blanking on that word? I don't know. But he is the guy from the original logo. The 3D remake has an updated logo that features Golbez instead. Golbez is the kind of the main villain throughout the game. But Kain shows up in the logo for originally, which is kind of weird because he's not the main character, but it kind of makes sense when you learn more about the game and the way that Final Fantasy logos typically work. Usually it's something that is instrumental to the plot. And Final Fantasy 1, the original logo is the Warrior of Light. You know, the basic design for the Warrior of Light. So that's your main hero. Final Fantasy 2, it's your villain, the Emperor. Final Fantasy 3, it's again the kind of the Warriors of Light, but a little bit different because it's different Warriors of Light. Final Fantasy 4, we have Kain, and like I said, there's a reason for that, and I'll get into it more once that portion of the story actually happens. Anyways, what's wrong? I'm sorry to have dragged you into this. My actions are my own. They are not your responsibility. I mastered the Dark Sword at His Majesty's orders, but it was to protect Baron, not to plunder. Don't torture yourself over orders. Surely the king has his reasons. I envy you, Cain. I envy the path you chose. Oh, I suppose I could have attained a higher rank had I become a Dark Knight like you. But my father, who passed away when I was still young, was a dragoon. Hey, Cain, that's a bit of a, as you know, Bob, thing, because Cecil, you grew up with him, he would already know that. So yeah, an as you know, Bob thing is, it's kind of a literary term. It's literally a shorthand for, it's basically what's known in theater as like maid and butler talk. You know, it's something that is there purely for the audience because the characters involved would already have access to this information. It's like, as you know, my father is dead. You know, brother of mine, you know, adopted brother of mine, best friend of mine. But yeah, so Cain chose to become a dragoon because his father was a dragoon. I felt that I might keep some sort of connection to him if I became a dragoon as well. I don't mean to bore you with my stories. I only mean to tell you not to overthink things. If you are lost in dark thought, then I'll be the one to steal your prey and slay that Eidolon tomorrow. Oh really? I won't stand idly on the sidelines. That's more like it. We should get some rest. We rise early tomorrow. So yeah, Cain is kind of our best friend and kind of adopted brother. Cecil is an orphan who was raised by the king as his adoptive son. And once Cain's father passed away, the same thing happened to him as well. It's best to suppress any disloyal thoughts if you wish to survive these times. I've heard rather disturbing rumors regarding the king lately. Well, you best keep them to yourself. The king is most displeased. He will not see you until you have delivered the Cornelian signet to the village of Mist. Well, alright then. What's over here? Got a couple guys. His Majesty is acting very strangely lately. Whatever others may say, I trust the king. Well, good for you. I don't. Cecil does still, but I don't. I heard you got the crystal from Mysidia. Yes, I did. I'm on duty. Leave me alone. Well, alright then. You are free to take the items from the storage room to help you with your mission. So yeah, press the switch to open the door. So we got 480 gil, got an ether, and a tent. And now there are hidden passages in this game as well, but I do not believe we have access to any of the ones in Castle Baron as of yet. Alright, let's go down this way, because we have the Black Magic Laboratory. Sleep! Sweet dreams, pal. Huh? Was it? You're not sleepy at all? Well, heck, what did I do wrong? I don't know. But apparently it didn't work. We're diligently working to develop more spells for actual combat. You go right ahead. Basic spells like Fire and Blizzard aren't powerful enough against many monsters. I seem to remember hearing about more potent spells, but... Alright, I'm trying to see if there are any... Okay. There are sometimes items inside like pots and stuff like that as well. And there are even invisible items as well, as you'll see in a bit. But for right now, I don't think there are any in here. Rosa became a white mage for you, Cecil, to help you in any way she could. Please don't worry her too much. So yeah, Rosa is... She will become a party member eventually. She is pretty much our main white mage of the game. The king is brimming with vigor these days. I find it somewhat unnatural. I'm currently studying basic white magic. The 4 levels of cure spell are Cure, Cura, Curaga, and Curaja. So I don't remember, but I think the original translation still had it being like Cure, Cure 2, Cure 3, Cure 4, and so on. I would have to double check that. I don't think we actually officially got the Ra, Ga, and Ja specifications for Final Fantasy spells, you know, to denote higher levels. I don't think we actually got that officially until Final Fantasy VIII. But of course, it was later retconned into better translations of older games and so on, remakes and so on. You know, because it became a standard there. Alright, let's go this way. Because there's more people to talk here. Baron's sacred treasures rest within these walls. Access to the chamber is forbidden. Well, see, the thing is, I can open the door. I just can't go through it because you can't get through here. Not until he moves, and he won't move for a good while. We have to pull another all-nighter today. I'm so tired. Oh, don't tell the boss that I was grousing. I won't. Have you seen Master Sid? He ordered us to service the airships. then just up and disappeared. So the funny thing about Sid, he makes an appearance in almost every single Final Fantasy. He even got retconned into Final Fantasy 1, or at least a reference to him did. He first appeared in Final Fantasy 2 as the captain of the airship. And ever since then, you know, he usually has something to do with airships, but he's pretty much made an appearance in every single, at least numbered Final Fantasy since then. And what's really funny when you think about it is, you know, he's in 2. You know, he was introduced in 2. Final Fantasy 4 was originally released as Final Fantasy 2 in the West. So no matter which way you look at it, Sid's first appearance was in Final Fantasy 2, whether in the West or in Japan itself. Which I think is kind of funny. Same thing with Chocobos, actually. Chocobos were first introduced in Final Fantasy 2, and they make an appearance here as well. This tower is off limits. Okay, guess I'm not going in there. In that case, let us go back this way. We can try going out here, but, you know, there's not much. A foreboding air surrounds the castle of late. All is well, sir. Alright. You leave early tomorrow. Please get some rest, sir. So yeah, we can't actually leave yet. Nightfall is approaching, sir. Please remain inside the castle. But I want to go. No, you can't escape your fate. So yeah, this door will not open on its own. You actually have to pull the lever to open it. I was gonna say Rosa. No, Cecil. Thank goodness you're all right. I was so worried. You left on such short notice. We're fine. I wish I could say the same for the Mysidians we slaughtered. Cecil, I'll visit you later, okay? Very well. So yeah, Rosa is kind of the love interest as well. She's Cecil's love interest. Alright, so this is the dungeon. We've locked up the Mysidian mages who opposed us, sir. You can talk to them through the doors. Yeah, through the bars, basically. But you gotta wait for them to get close enough to actually talk, and they kind of wander randomly. You won't get away with this, you hear me? Come on. A little bit closer. Oh, come on. There we go. I do not expect you to spare us, but please, return the crystal to Mysidia. Alright, what about you? What do you have to say? Come on, bud. Seriously? One more. There we go. You idiots don't know anything. The crystal isn't just any old jewel. Yes, I agree. But there's nothing I can do about it. Alright. Well, well, well. Look who's back unscathed. So yeah, this is Sid. Final Fantasy IV's Sid. Rosa was worried sick about you. Don't you ever worry her like that again, you hear? So, how are my airships? I'll bet you and your goons wrecked them up something awful. Hey, what's the matter with you, kiddo? The truth is... And he tells him... What? The king demoted you? What about the Red Wings? They'll be a mess without you. What's come over the king? He's been acting peculiar. I don't build my airships so that they can be used to slaughter people. The whole town is beginning to talk, you know. Cecil, be careful out there. Make short work of that mission and get back safe. Whoa, I have to start heading home or my daughter's going to kill me. Alright. So now we have control again, so we can check this out. Ow, my arm's broken. Excuse me. Captain. So yeah, he's dreaming about us. We'll just eat and laugh and try to forget about Mysidia. So much for the Red Wings' honor. I still can't believe what we did. So yeah, this is the Red Wings Barracks. Maybe the Dracoons bunk here too, I don't know. Just double checking. Nope, nothing. And this tower is actually where our quarters are.